It is crazy to think that when you look at this garden and how thick and lush and full it is, that it is actually time to start prepping for the fall garden. I'm kind of at the point where it's the last possible time that I can start getting the fall garden ready before it's too late. So the first thing that I have to do is basically pull out everything that is ready to be harvested. And I've done that in most of the in-ground garden, but this last row here were my cowpeas, and I did debate on whether I should get another harvest out of them or if I just needed to pull them out. And I decided to just go ahead and pull them out so that I could get more food in for the fall garden. This row was kind of unrecognizable once I did pull all of that plant material out, and so I'm just trying to make some sort of edgeways so that you can kind of distinguish the path between the planting area. So one really critical step that I have to take right now is to top dress each row with some compost. And we have two compost piles. Here, Nate is working with our second compost pile, which really is not broken down. He was searching for some soil for me, and he did end up finding me some. The first pile that I was pulling from, I had gone into the garden to put some down on one of the rows. And unfortunately, I told Nate that I wanted him to push my compost into one big pile, and he went to the wrong pile and went ahead and mixed in a bunch of rotting material with the soil that I was trying to get from that. So I'm really lucky that he did find me some more soil in the second pile. There was a lot of plant material and wood chips in that, and so I used my sifter to go ahead and make that soil a little bit lighter, and I really did want to get a lot of those wood chips out because I'm afraid that if I top dress with that and my plants are growing in that the wood chips, as they break down, will rob the soil of nitrogen, and then it would be really detrimental to my plants. So here I am just kind of working, and this took a long time, just wagonful after wagonful, just top dressing these rows. This garden has been in for about 3 to 4 seasons now. This might be my 4th season in it. So 2 summers and 2 fall gardens here, and the soil really did need to be amended. I haven't brought any in from any large companies like by the truckload or anything, so I was really lucky that we had enough compost to get this done for me. There were a couple rows that I did not top dress where I'm just going to do some cover crops, and hopefully they will do well. I'm hoping that the cover crops will actually work as my amendments in those rows for next year, just creating some good soil, some good mulch and things like that. So anyways, I'm just going to go through and spread this. You can see that I've moved the irrigation off to the side. One thing that's really nice about the irrigation that Nate put in is that whether it's in the beds or on the rows, I can just sort of move it out of the way while I am working with stuff. You'll see that this particular soil here, this is from that first compost pile, and I didn't sift this, and so it kind of kills me to have to deal with kind of lumpy, chunky soil like this. I like everything to be really perfect. So, but it was hot, it was a long day, and so I just kind of dealt with it.
Good morning. We are right in the beginning of September, and it is that time to plant out the fall garden. It feels like the days are just flying by. I feel like I just started all of my seeds up at the house, but it's time to get them out. I've got to get them out at about 6 weeks before my first frost to give them some good time to get some really good established roots so that when the frost does come, these plants can handle it. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. You can see that most of these bottom rows here have been cleared out. There is one up at the top that I do have some peas in. I had to sow those like 3 different times because the peas just kept rotting and it was so hot. And just the irrigation was running, and so the hot and the wet just made them rot. So I'm not sure if we will end up getting a harvest off of those peas yet. But you can see the tomatoes are still going, which I can't believe. I thought they would be much more diseased than they are at this point, but they're still putting on fruit, and there's still quite a lot of fruit that needs to ripen up. So anyways, guys, I am going to show you how I'm going to get this stuff planted out. I'm hoping to get it all done today, but I doubt that that will happen. So let's get going.
So anytime that I am transplanting starts that I have started from seed up in my house, I'll always just start by prepping my rows by digging holes first. That kind of gives me the correct spacing. Here I know that I'm going to be planting some cabbage in this row, and so I'm sort of offsetting the holes on each side, trying to get as many plants as I can per row. When you kind of stagger them, you can get more in a smaller space. And then I'm going to come through, and in each hole I'm putting a mixture of blood meal for nitrogen and bone meal for phosphorus. Brassicas really like nitrogen and phosphorus, and they're very heavy feeders, so I always amend my planting holes before I plant them. Now I'm planting two types of cabbages. In this row I'm planting what's called a late flat Dutch. It's ready in about 120 days, so this will be my second cabbage that I will be harvesting once they mature. And I'm just kind of going down and firming the soil around these guys. I'll make sure to give these a good watering and then place the drip line right on them so that they don't have any stress, because it is still really hot here. In this row here, I'm planting another cabbage variety called Early Golden Acres. This cabbage is going to be ready quite a bit earlier than that late flat Dutch, so this will be the first cabbage that we'll be harvesting from. So we will get a cabbage harvest early and then another one later into the winter. So I like to do two varieties, one that's ready earlier and one that is ready later, just to kind of space out that harvest. Now in this row, I didn't think that I would actually need this row. I thought that maybe I would do a cover crop here, but I still had some plants that I needed to get out. So I had to go grab a little bit more compost from my piles there. And so I'm just kind of spreading that. Vincent came down to bring me a glass of water, and I kind of voluntold him to water in some of my plants since they were getting a little hot. Now in this row, I'm going to be planting out some Romanesco cauliflower, and that is actually a mix between broccoli and cauliflower, and I've never grown this one before. I've not had great luck with your traditional cauliflowers. They always end up either rotting or they just aren't that nice white color, and they just sort of look off, and honestly we just never eat them. So I wanted to try this variety, so that's what I am planting here. I'm also going to end up planting some Napa cabbage and some spinach and some other greens in the in-ground garden. And then I'm going to be doing some Swiss chard and collards and lettuce and other greens up in my green stalks right by the house.
So it's a few days later after the clip of me planting everything in the in-ground garden. And today it's very early in the morning. It's like 60 degrees, so fall is definitely in the air. And I'm going to be working with this bed here. This bed had my butternut squash in it, and it kind of got taken out. I really didn't see any squash vine borers, but the vines just began to die back. And so I've harvested all that, and I'm kind of at the point where it's like do or die. If I don't get things directly sown now, then I'm not going to have time for them to grow before the winter sets in. And so I want to work with this bed here. I've never been successful at growing carrots, so I'm going to try two things. First, I'm going to clean the bed out. And the two things that I'm going to use today are going to be peat moss, almost an entire compressed cube of that, and then also vermiculite. I'm really trying to lighten up and get that soil very airy and, you know, not so dense so that my carrots will grow well. So my first thing that I have to accomplish when I sow my carrots is that I have to get them to germinate, and then the soil obviously has to be nice and light for them to be able to penetrate that and grow a nice root. So that's what I'm doing today.
So I'm just going to pull back that irrigation and dig 2 trenches with my shovel that I can then put the peat moss and vermiculite into. Like I said, I'm trying to get this soil nice and light and airy, and that's really important with carrots, because if your soil is too dense, you will not get a nice root. You'll kind of get a short, stubby, misshapen carrot, and I really want to have carrots this winter, so I'm going to try my hardest here to amend the soil and see how it works. When I sow my carrot seeds, I will actually mix them with some sand. broadcast them over the bed, and then water them in really well and cover them with some cardboard just to help keep them nice and moist until they germinate. And at the first sign of germination, I'll pull that cardboard off. So hopefully this year we will be successful at growing carrots.